All right, picture this. It sounds like a scene that got cut from, I don't know, a Tarantino movie, maybe a fever dream. But it's actually just a Tuesday night for the person we're talking about today. You're sitting in the back of an Uber. It's late. You're a wheelchair user, so, you're already navigating a world that doesn't really build friend you.
Right.
And your driver is erratic, swerving across lanes, ranting about politics in that way that just, makes the hairs on your neck stand up.
Yeah, I'm already uncomfortable.
And then the whole vibe shifts. It goes from just uncomfortable to genuinely life-threatening.
Yeah.
The driver opens the glove box, pulls out a handgun, and literally pokes you in the arm with the barrel.
Wow, just to see if you can feel it.
Exactly. Testing your sensation with a loaded weapon. And then, without missing a beat, she looks you right in the eye and claims that the two of you are menstrually synced up. 1111, make a wish.
It is absolutely terrifying, but it's also so absurd. It's almost funny. And that tension right on that razor's edge between tragedy and comedy, that is exactly where we are living for this deep dive.
Today, we are diving into a conversation that really just blew my mind. It's between the comedian Theo and his guest, Fiona Cauley. Now, Fiona is a powerhouse. She's a comedian, a podcaster, and she is living with a rare disease called Friedreich's ataxia. And the sources for this, the interview, the articles, all the background notes, they paint this picture of someone who uses dark humor not just to cope, but as a legitimate weapon.
A weapon is a really good way to put it. The mission here isn't just to look at some medical case study. We're exploring the reality of living with a progressive disability, the biology behind it, and the frankly bizarre ways society interacts with people who move differently.
We have a lot to cover. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of genetic disorders, the history of disability rights, including some stuff about fire codes I definitely did not know, and we will for sure get back to the full story of that Uber ride from hell.
But where do we start?
I think we have to start with the biology because I was reading through the medical breakdown in our notes.
Yeah.
And it's just terrifyingly simple.
It really is. It's a game of microscopic margins.
It all comes down to one single protein, just one. It's called frataxin.
Right.
Most of us, we produce it without thinking. It's the, energy powerhouse for ourselves. But for people with Friedreich's ataxia or FA, that whole production line is broken.
Right. And without frataxin, your cells, particularly your nervous system and the heart, they essentially run out of battery power and just start to degenerate. It affects about 5,000 people in the U.S., so it's considered a rare disease. But the genetics are where the odds just get staggering.
This is the part that made me stop and actually reread the source. So it's a recessive trait. Both parents have to be carriers for it.
Right.
But even if they're both carriers, there's only a 25% chance, a 1 in 4 chance, that their child will have FA.
Correct. It's a roll of the dice every single time.
But in Fiona's family, she has it, and her 2 siblings have it, all 3 kids. The statistical anomaly of that is just wild. It's like hitting the lottery 3 times in a row, but, the worst possible lottery.
And because it's so rare, and because it usually onsets during adolescence, the road to diagnosis is often a complete nightmare. Fiona calls it her gaslighting phase, and reading about it, you can totally see why.
Oh, it's infuriating. Just imagine being 15 years old, you're an athlete, you're playing volleyball, and suddenly your legs just don't listen to you anymore. You start tripping, you're walking weird. And instead of doctors rushing in, the adults in your life just assume you're a delinquent.
Her volleyball coach thought she was slacking off. Her principal literally pulled her aside to smell her breath because they were convinced she was drunk or high at school.
Even her own family. They initially thought she was just copying her older sister, who was already dealing with some health issues. They thought it was like a cry for attention.
That is the tragedy of invisible progression, We see a loss of physical coordination, and our societal bias jumps immediately to intoxication. We don't think neurological issue, we think wasted.
Yeah.
Fiona actually had to be the one to demand a neurologist visit when she turned 18.
Can you just imagine the validation, but also the horror of finally getting that diagnosis? The doctors basically handed her a timeline. They said, progressive loss of coordination, slurred speech because the tongue is a muscle too.
Eventually a wheelchair, loss of hearing, loss of sight.
And they gave her a life expectancy of about 40 years old.
It's such a heavy burden for an 18-year-old. She talked about spending 6 or 7 years in this deep depression, just feeling like her entire future had been erased. But, and this is really important, the science has moved forward since then.
Yes. She's now on a medication called Skyclarys. It's the first ever FDA-approved treatment for FA. It's not a cure, it doesn't fix the genes, but it's designed to pause the progression.
Which turns a terminal countdown into a manageable condition. It changes the entire outlook. And I think that shift in outlook is what allowed her to pivot so hard into comedy. She stopped hiding the condition and started using it.
Before the wheelchair, she had what she calls the cane phase. And this is where her personality really just shines through. She started using a cane at 21, mostly so bartenders would actually serve her instead of cutting her off because of her walk.
That's practicality mixed with performance.
But it wasn't just any cane. She found a sword cane, the ones that unscrew to reveal a blade. She called it her British pepper spray.
I love that. It's a hilarious image, but it's also quite telling, isn't it? She carried it on dates. She's making a joke of it, but there's a real vulnerability there. A young woman with a mobility issue going on dates with strangers. She felt she needed a weapon.
And that sharp edge is what propelled her comedy career. She didn't stay in the local scene for long. She got a spot on Kill Tony, which, for listeners who don't know, is a massive live comedy podcast.
Huge.
She performed at Madison Square Garden and an arena in Texas.
And the Kill Tony effect is real. She went from 30,000 social media followers to 500,000, like overnight.
Wow.
But fame looks different when you have a visible disability.
Yeah, the DMs she gets are something else. She talked about how people feel entitled to ask her these really invasive questions, or they send these weirdly fetishistic messages. Or, and this might be worse, the pity messages. People saying, "You're so brave," which she points out is often just them making themselves feel better.
It's voyeurism masquerading as sympathy. It creates this dynamic where she has to constantly manage other people's reactions to her own existence. There's a story she told about a bar called Kung Fu in Nashville that just perfectly encapsulates this frustration.
This story made me sweat just reading it. So she's at this bar, right? Her friend is actually drunk-like, needs help drunk. A guy tries to take the friend home, and Fiona goes into protection mode. She literally blocks the doorway with her wheelchair to stop them.
She is asserting her authority. She's the designated sober friend protecting her vulnerable friend.
But the guy just looks at her, looks at the bouncers, and tells security, "Oh, don't worry about her. That's my girlfriend's mentally retarded friend. She doesn't remember who I am."
And the bouncers believed him.
That's the nightmare. Because FA affects her speech. She had that drunk slur we talked about. She's trying to explain, I am cognitively 100% this guy's a predator. But her physical symptoms just undermine her authority completely.
It highlights a conflation that happens all the time. People assume physical disability equals cognitive disability. In a chaotic, loud environment, she lost her agency because she couldn't perform ableness fast enough.
Which brings us right back to the ultimate loss of agency. That Uber ride. We teased it at the top, but the details are even wilder than I let on.
This is the Stone Cold Sober Show anecdote.
Right. She's booked for a show where the gimmick is that the comics are drunk, but she's the designated driver comic.
Yeah.
The irony is already pretty thick. She gets picked up in what Theo Von calls a Nissan Altima from Purgatory.
It's always an Ultima.
Always. And the driver's immediately off, swerving, ranting about liberals, ranting about guns, and then the glove box opens.
It's the casual nature of it that gets me. The driver doesn't point the gun at her head like a robbery. She just pokes Fiona in the arm with the barrel. She's testing Fiona's paralysis, which, by the way, she doesn't have. She has ataxia, not paralysis. She can feel it.
Can you imagine sitting there, feeling the cold steel of a gun barrel poking your arm, while the driver is rambling about being menstrually synced? 11.11, Make-A-Wish. It's just so unhinged.
And Fiona is trapped. She can't just tuck and roll out of the car. She is literally held hostage by her mobility needs in that moment.
But the ending of this story is the most Fiona thing ever. They get to the venue. There's nobody outside to help with the wheelchair. The driver, the one with the gun, is just sitting there. Fiona is running on pure adrenaline.
She just had to get her own chair out of the truck.
Yes. She has to drag her own wheelchair out, assemble it, and get herself out of the car, all while waiting to see if this woman is going to shoot her.
It's a testament to resilience, but also to the sheer absurdity of her life.
Yeah.
And then the chaser. She survives this near-death experience, does the show, and where does she end up?
At a penthouse party, she gets whisked away to some wealthy stranger's apartment. The source implies it might be the musician Yellow Wolf, or someone in that circle. And she's eating pasta in a penthouse. She went from a gun barrel in a Nissan to luxury in, 3 hours?
It's amazing storytelling, but it also serves as a lens to examine how society deals with disability. It's either horror or inspiration, rarely normal. The source material pivoted from this story to a discussion about the new autistic Barbie, and I thought their take was really interesting.
Oh, the Mattel doll with the noise-canceling headphones.
Yeah.
Fiona and Theo were pretty skeptical about this.
They called out the performative nature of it. Fiona made the point that autism isn't an accessory you can just clip onto a doll. But what struck me was her stance on the language. She prefers the term disabled over handicapped.
Yeah, he broke this down really well. She said handicap implies a tool or an item, like a parking placard or a handicap in a golf game.
Right.
Disabled describes her actual lived reality. It's not a bad word. It's just the truth of her situation.
Words matter, and rights matter. They brought up Judy Heumann, and I'm so glad they did. She is essentially the Martin Luther King Jr. of the disability rights movement.
I was shocked by the historical context here. In 1970, Judy Heumann was denied a teaching license in New York. The Board of Education literally told her she couldn't teach because she was a fire hazard.
A fire hazard.
They said in an emergency she couldn't evacuate the students.
It's the safety excuse used to justify exclusion. Heumann sued them and won. She went on to found Disabled in Action and was instrumental in getting the ADA passed. The source reminds us that before people like Heumann, businesses used to have signs, actual signs, that said no cripples allowed because it made other customers uncomfortable.
That wasn't even that long ago. It's such a stark reminder that access isn't a favor, it's a civil right.
And that theme, the right to exist, the right to be heard, actually served as a bridge to the next part of their conversation, which got surprisingly serious. They moved from the personal struggle of being heard in a bar or an Uber to a global struggle for voice and authority.
Yeah, the transition in the conversation was sharp, but it made a lot of sense. They started talking about authority figures who stop listening to the people they're supposed to serve. They looked at a clip of an ICE agent shooting a woman in Minneapolis.
This was a heavy segment. The clip showed a woman, Renee Nicole Good, blocking an agent's vehicle with her body. The agent drove forward, she didn't move, and he shot her.
And the context is just tragic all around. The source notes that this specific agent had been dragged 200 feet by a vehicle in a previous incident.
Right, so you likely have severe PTSD at play. But the hosts didn't just look at the individual, they looked at the system. They brought up the recruitment posters for ICE. Theo called them thirst traps.
They really did look like movie posters.
Mm.
The hiring standards had been lowered, age limits removed, college degrees not always required. It paints a picture of a system prioritizing the quantity of boots on the ground over the mental stability or quality of the agents.
It's a breakdown of trust. And then they zoomed out even further to Iran.
This felt like the ultimate example of losing your voice. They were discussing the protests there, the economic collapse with 40% inflation, and the regime's response to the unrest.
Reports of 12,000 protesters killed. But the specific detail that resonated with Fiona was the internet blackout. The regime just flipping the kill switch on digital communication.
That hit home for her. She said explicitly that her biggest fear isn't the wheelchair. She's made peace with that. Her fear is losing her voice.
Exactly. In the modern world, and especially for someone with limited mobility, the internet is your voice. It's your connection to the world. If you cut that off, you are effectively silencing a population. Whether it's a disease taking your vocal cords or a government taking your Starlink connection, the result is the same. Isolation.
It really emphasizes how fragile our autonomy is. We think we're in control, but so much relies on systems working. Our nervous system, our political system. When those break down, you have to find something else to hold on to.
Which is why I think the conversation ended on the topic of love. It seems like a hard pivot, but it's actually the answer to that isolation.
Fiona's relationship with her husband, Matt Taylor. He's a comic from Alabama. And honestly, their story is just sweet.
But still chaotic. The proposal story is perfect.
Oh, classic comedy couple stuff. They went to dinner at a restaurant literally named Bad Idea.
You can't make that up. Foreshadowing.
He felt the bad omen, so he rushed her over to Zany's, the comedy club, and proposed right under the marquee. But even in their marriage, they have to deal with that societal awkwardness we talked about. People just assume Matt is her caregiver, not her husband.
It strips the romance right out of it. But Fiona admitted something very vulnerable. She said she used to fear that no one would sign up for this.
Who wants a wife who's going to need a wheelchair? Who wants a future that looks like this?
And the realization she came to is that everyone's future is uncertain. You could marry an Olympian, and they could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Matt and Fiona just know what their challenge is up front. Matt helps her on the road. He carries her gear. It's a partnership.
It goes back to that resilience. Fiona said something that really stuck with me. She said before the diagnosis, she was vapid. She cared about volleyball and, superficial stuff.
The disease stripped the vanity away.
Completely. She calls us the able-bodied people daywalkers. She said when you lose the ability to be a daywalker, you realize what actually matters. It's connection, it's humor, and it's using your voice while you still have it.
That is the takeaway for me. We operate with this illusion of stability. We walk, we talk, we scroll, we take it all for granted. Fiona's story is a reminder that life can change in a single doctor's appointment or a single Uber ride.
So to the listener, next time you're walking down the street or stepping over a curb without looking down, maybe just take a second to appreciate the engineering of your own body. And maybe think about the people who have to fight a little harder just to navigate the same world.
And if you ever see a sword cane, you know not to mess with the owner.
Absolutely. British pepper spray for the win.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.